Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We are about to get started with our second workshop in the Financial Grief Managed series for Lucid Law Debt Relief. This workshop is entitled Goal Setting. So I want to tell you first a little bit. First, I want to welcome everyone who's here in person. I want to welcome our friends who are on the Zoom, and anybody who needs a copy to be able to rewatch this program after it's completed. Please just let us know and we'll send you the link. If you have any questions and you're online, just raise your hand. I'll get to it when I can. We may reserve them for the end. Anyone in person, you can just let me know if you have a question as we go through the workshop. People here have a printed copy of the workshop, and those online, you should be able to see the PowerPoint as we go through it. Just let me know if there are any issues with that, okay? And so without further ado, we'll get started. So I want to tell you, first of all, I just want to tell you what inspired this workshop in the series. The first workshop in our series was Credit Repair Done Right. And in that workshop, we talked about how to best utilize your newfound relief from debt, if you are one of our clients that just did a bankruptcy process, to then go to the next step to improve your credit score and be able to utilize credit better. And the reason that goal setting is the second workshop in the series is very simply because I always ask my clients when they sit with me and they struggle over whether or not to file for bankruptcy and what to do. The question of how is this going to affect my credit score is invariably an integral part of that conversation. And I always ask, why? Not that we can't make your credit score great or great again. A lot of people go from I've never had a good credit score to I'm finally in the 720s or higher post bankruptcy. And that's great. But I always want to know why. And people have very, I think, very limited understanding really of why they do care about their credit score, why they should care about their credit score, or maybe even should not. Oftentimes after I talk to people and I go through what they want in life and what they're looking to do, it's at the end of the day, their credit score may not really matter. It's not the most important thing. So I thought goal setting, after talking about credit repair, was a logical next step. And why? Because when we are setting a goal, we are creating a next step in our life. So I'm going to tell you before we really dive into the PowerPoint, one of the things that you will see in the PowerPoint consistently throughout it is quotes from Earl Nightingale. I put a lot of Earl Nightingale in there because when I was first learning how to build my business and structure it for sustainable success, the first thing that I was told by my business coach was, read Earl Nightingale's Lead the Field. I have read that book 3 times in the last 5 years. It is phenomenal and inspiring and uplifting. Earl Nightingale wrote the Lead the Field, The Strangest Secret. He had a very lengthy career on the radio. A lot of his radio shows were then turned into written works. And it's all comes down to the very simple theory that he tested and proved that what you think about, you bring about. And that's what we're here to talk to you about, is helping you to really go the next step and think about the things that you want in life so that you can learn how to bring them to fruition or to manifest them, as we like to say sometimes. So if we're looking at the first page in the PowerPoint, you can see there, oh, there it goes, okay. The first secret I learned from Earl Nightingale. Everybody likes to say that we all have goals. And the truth is, we don't. Most people live their lives in a reactionary fashion. They do what they think needs to be done based upon exterior forces, and they allow those exterior forces to control their destiny. And unfortunately, without a goal and a plan and a decision about what you want your life to be like, you're always going to be in a reactionary loop. So, we need to set goals, because goals give us a structure for how we're going to do certain things to get what we want in life. Earl Nightingale says, we can let circumstances rule us, or we can take charge and rule our lives from within. And that's what this is all about. Because people with goals succeed because they know where they are going. And so that roadmap, that plan, that's what we're here to talk about today. Earl Nightingale taught, first you set the goal. Once you have a goal, all you need is the plan, the roadmap, and the courage to press on to your destination. We have to stop here and make it very clear. A dream is not a goal, and a goal is not a dream. Okay? Everyone has dreams. Dreams are not the same as goals, because dreams don't have the structure to make them sustainable. You can't have a castle in the sky without a way to get there. You need to build the ladder. And that is what this is all about, right? So, dreams are probably the greatest source of frustration for most people, because they build these pie in the sky ideas. They build these illusions of what they want their life to be like, but they don't create a way to get there. A simple person who is happy with very little and does not have big dreams is most likely much happier than a person who has big dreams and, the idea of wanting a comfortable retirement, but they don't put down on paper a specific plan for what a comfortable retirement is going to look like and how they're going to get there. Actually, I'm going to tell a sidebar story. It's one of my favorite stories. Story about a fisherman. Okay. This guy, he lives in a little, local fishing community. He's on the beach. He's got a fishing rod. He's bringing in his fish. He takes them. He cooks them. He lives in a little hut. Very simple life. These two kids see him on the beach and like, wow, you're an excellent fisherman. They're like, oh, yes. I've learned from generations. And they said, you should get 3 fishing rods so that you could bring in 3 times the amount of fish. And he says, well, why would I want to do that? And they said, well, because once you start getting more fish, you can sell the fish, and then you can buy more fishing rods, and you can bring in more and sell more of your extra fish. And eventually you could get a boat, and you could get a house and have all of the comforts of life. And he says, oh, wow. That sounds interesting. Then what? Why would I want to do that? Like, what do I get after that? And the guy said, well, once you're done building all of that, and you have a good house, and you have a boat, and you have a business that is strong and sustainable, then you could just retire and just live by the beach and just have no worries and relax for the rest of your life. And the man looks at him and says, that's what I'm doing now. He was a simple man that had simple needs. Now, not everybody's like that, right? Some people, their idea of comfort is not a hut on the beach with a fishing rod to bring in their day-to-day food. People have different ideas of what they want their life to be like. And so when you think about what you want your life to be like, you have to bring it to the full extent and really have all of those steps in place to structure a sustainable future to reach those goals. I'm going to tell you another story before we go into the deeper aspects of this. So one of my favorite movies is Cool Runnings. In the movie Cool Runnings, the main character, Doris Bannock, is a runner who can do the 100-meter faster than anyone in history. And he wants to go to the Olympics. His dad was an Olympic runner, and he's following in his dad's footsteps, and he wants to beat that record. But his main goal is to go to the Olympics, and he's determined. And in the movie, another sprinter, Junior Bevel, trips while they're in the qualifiers and knocks Doris Bannock and another runner over, and they get disqualified. And Doris goes to try to have the whole thing turned over and do a new qualifying run, and they won't let him. They're like, no, next time. Well, the next time is going to be 4 years from now. And Doris is like, I don't know what's going to happen in 4 years. And I am going to the Olympics. It was not a dream. He spent most of his life preparing for that moment, laying the groundwork. And he opened up opportunities to achieve that goal, even through the most great adversity of having been completely disqualified because somebody accidentally tripped him. So he finds out that there's this local guy that used to have a bobsled team that really wanted to get a Jamaican bobsled team. And his theory was that if you had sprinters that could run faster than anybody else, they would be able to get that bobsled launched faster than the other teams because they were runners, not bobsledders. So he goes and he finds this guy and he convinces the guy to help him create a team. And they work tirelessly through every step of the process because Doris Bannock did not have a dream. He had a goal. He had consistently laid the groundwork so that when adversity caused him to have to pivot and revise his plan, he was able to do it, and he was able to take advantage of the opportunities that opened up before him. And so, his goal, I'm going to go to the Olympics as soon as I'm eligible. Nothing got in the way because he made sure of it, and he didn't give up, and he just pivoted every time he had to. And so, again, the more you believe you're going to achieve, the more realistic your goal becomes. Some say that you have to see yourself having already achieved the goal and live accordingly. I will just say as a word of caution, you have to be careful of people who say that sometimes. I was in another business coaching program for a while where people literally were like buying $1,200 shoes while they were trying to build their business. That's not what they mean, right? It's more of it's a spiritual manifestation, not a crazy person manifestation, right? We want to basically conduct. So for example, when I made the decision 5 years ago to build this business into a sustainable, structured business, I started writing procedures. And you can ask any of my staff. Everybody thinks I'm crazy. I don't care. Because you know what? Someday I'm going to have enough employees that they're going to need those training materials. And actually, we already do. I had 5 people on staff. And when my staff was having to start to train new people to do things the way we do them, and I just kept saying for years, everybody was so tired of me saying, look at the procedures. I wrote a procedure on that. This is how we do it. Why did this go wrong? Oh, because you didn't follow the procedure. But I was conducting this business as if it was already $1 million business when we were only grossing about 195. And now we're closer to that goal than we're not closer than I imagined, but we are achieving it because we structured ourselves to get to that finish line. And every time we have to change, we do. So how do we build a goal that gets us to where we want to be in life. Again, Earl Nightingale says we create a plan by building a roadmap, right? There's a lot of people that use the SMARTER method as a helpful approach to create your roadmap. And it really is very helpful. SMARTER stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, evaluate, and revise. Okay, so we're going to go through each of those and talk about why they're important components to creating a goal. So first of all, your goal has to be specific. You have to be very clear about what you want to accomplish. So ask yourself, how is this goal going to improve your life? Will it put you in a better financial position? If so, why does being in a better financial position matter to you? If you can't answer that question, then you do not yet know what you want. And that's the first step. So you unpack it backwards from there, right? So remember, you cannot get what you want if you don't know what you want. If you don't know what you want, you get whatever life hands you. And you can work harder than anybody else and still never achieve what you really want out of life if you don't take the first step of making sure that you know what you want. And knowing what you want necessarily means that you know why you want it. So I'm just going to go back before we finish this to the example of my building this business. Okay. I was at a point where we were grossing about $192,000. I looked at my household and our mortgage expense, my daughter's school expense. I looked at everything that we needed to sustain our current lifestyle because I didn't want to lose our lifestyle because of some change in circumstance that was unexpected, right? And I apologize if it sounds morbid, but I thought to myself one day, what good is 2 years of life insurance if my husband dies? I need to make sure that we can sustain over the long haul. So what I did was I did a full budget of what my daughter and I would need to keep our quality of life if we no longer had my husband's income, benefits, support, etc. And I came up with a number. And grossing $192,000 at the way the structure I was paying myself less than half of that. And that wasn't enough. And what I realized was, in order for this firm to be able to pay me what I would need for my family not to have to sell the house or stop going to private school, or any of all of those things, that, be able to still take a vacation every year. All of those things, right? I realized what I needed this firm to be able to pay me. And I started building to be $1 million firm, because as I laid that framework, there were a lot of expenses that go along with building a business that was big enough to pay me what I would need for my family to be able to continue without my husband. Not that I wish my husband any ill. Hopefully he is also prepared if I unfortunately am not around. But I made it my business to be prepared to take care of my family if I was alone, on my own, I should say. So I have a why, right? Which is taking care of my family in a certain way. And I created a budget, and I started structuring a business that would be able to pay me enough to satisfy that need. Okay, so I planted that in my mind 5 years ago. I have carried that budget with me. We have made changes to the budget. I decided that life insurance was an important component of that plan. So I budgeted an extra amount every year that I was going to need the firm to be able to pay me so that I would be able to have life insurance. That way, if I was the one to die, my family would also be protected. That became part of my plan. So the roadmap changed a little bit because we needed to do some things a little bit differently to build that in too. Earl Nightingale says, whatever we plan in our subconscious mind and nourish with repetition and emotion will one day become a reality. And so that's why you write down your goal. You make it very specific and you write it down. And so I have there, we do this by this date for this reason, right? So you have a specific goal, you have a time frame, and you have a purpose. And you put that up in front of you everywhere you can. If it's a picture, like going back to Cool Runnings, there was a character, Yul Brynner, and he wanted to buy a mansion. So he carried with him in his pocket a picture of Buckingham Palace. And he busted his butt working out, training, doing everything to get to the Olympics because it was his belief that getting to the Olympics would make him successful enough to buy his mansion. Did he really necessarily want Buckingham Palace? No, he didn't even know it was Buckingham Palace, but he had that picture, that reality that he held on to. And it sounds a little bit corny, but it really does help. I have Post-it notes all over my office with the dollar figures that we need to achieve for me to fulfill my goal, the gross revenue figures the firm needs to achieve for me to get to my goal. So I also will add one caveat. We'll get to this in a little bit more detail later in the presentation, but when you say I will do this by this date and for this reason, I also like to add just a little something that I have come to realize because I don't believe in limiting beliefs. I believe that we should have a sense of abundance, not scarcity. And so when I look at this, when I'm writing it for me, and I recommend you consider the same, I say, I will do at least this, so that you're not locking yourself into a cap on your goal. You can always achieve more. That's fine, right? So I always put in, I will do at least this by this date and for this reason. So the second step in your smarter goals is that they need to be measurable. Making your goals measurable, quantifying them so that you can evaluate your progress and your overall success. You need to express your goals in clear terms so that you will know where you are and when you have succeeded. That way you don't get frustrated during the process, right? It's so easy to not get there as fast as you wanted to, or in the exact order you wanted to, and then let that get you very frustrated. But if you have it quantified and measured throughout the process, you can see where adjustments needed to be made. And then that makes it much easier to stay on track because you don't get frustrated and give up because you know exactly where you are on your roadmap. In business today, people love to talk about deliverables. I like to think that what they mean is measurables. But since we live in a type A ruled world, people like to say deliverables because it's more aggressive or assertive, right? But what I think deliverables really are is it's a sense of the things that we can look at to see if we're getting to our goal. It's the same in every business plan, right? When we're looking at, are we going to do this project? And somebody says, what are the deliverables? What are the benchmarks? How do I know I'm getting there? Right? So we're going to call them measurables because it's how we measure our path to fulfilling our goal. Excuse me. So we always want to ask ourselves, did I set benchmarks along the way to make sure that I'm staying on track? Because that's how we make sure that our specific goal is achievable and realistic, because we're going to create that path. So the A in smarter is achievable. Whether your goal is to improve your financial situation or to find a way to create more time to do the things you love with the people you love, the surest way to succeed is to take achievable steps. So as you are literally writing down your roadmap, you want to have benchmarks that you're measuring, and each of those benchmarks is an achievable step. So let's go to, we can go back to my structuring my business for growth and success, which was first, I started writing procedures for everything that I did. And I hired a part-time person to help me to do billing and some other things that needed to get done so that I could have enough time to start writing the procedures. That way, when I hired somebody, I would have a training tool for them. That was step one. And not only that, but procedures is very broad, right? I have a certain way that I engage with clients on the phone. I have a certain way that I manage a case. I have a certain way that I do sales. I have a certain way that I do each specific kind of case that we run, whether it's a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 or a debt settlement. Each of them has their own process. So what I did was, the first month, I set aside time to write down procedures for how I wanted people to engage with me, so that when I needed time to do other work, I could block it out on my calendar, and I was not always reacting to the phone or reacting to emails. So I structured times when I looked at emails, times when I answered the phone, and I set, as soon as I had people that could set appointments for me, that was their job. And so when I hired staff, I made sure that I was still going to have time to do the next steps to achieve my goal, because I would never get to $1 million business if I was trying to do everything. So I had to create time in my day. That was the first step. That was an achievable goal. It took me about 6 hours to write that procedure over the course of a month. And it is a living document. I will tell you, it changes. It still changes after 5 years. There are always little tweaks, things that we like, that I like and don't like and want to do better or different, right? But that's okay, because it's still that step in the process. And just like my good friend Doris, right? Doris, he did the same thing, right? When he was little, he wasn't running the 100 meters in whatever it was, some like 9 seconds or some craziness, right? No, he was a little kid practicing sprinting, but every day he practiced, he would get a little bit faster and he would keep trying a little bit more. And if he hurt his knee, he would massage his knee, ice his knee, whatever he needed, so that he could get back out there and start practicing again. Each step in the process, right? So if you have a big goal, it's okay. You can have a big, audacious goal that everybody thinks is crazy. Don't be afraid of it. Just break it down. Break it into smaller chunks. What are maybe 5 smaller goals that I can achieve that will eventually get me to my bigger goal? So break it into smaller steps. You can even break it into separate goals. And, you can say, excuse me, you can say, by the end of 2022, I will have, let's just say, by the end of 2022, I will have at least 30 new clients. And at the end of 2025, my goal is to have at least 100 new clients every year. But at the end of 2022, I'm going to have at least 30 new clients. And then at the end of 2023, I'm going to increase that number. And that way we're working on building the goal in smaller steps. One of my goals also is to be able to free up enough time to do things I love, right? So I do the New York Renaissance Fair with my daughter during the summer. And that's a lot of fun. But it's not an end in itself. Someday I want to fulfill my childhood dream of getting a degree in performing arts. And it's no longer a dream because I have created a goal. I am doing things in my spare time that will help me to be an applicant that will be eligible for admission to Mason Gross School of Performing Arts by 2025. If the business allows for me to be able to have that time and flexibility and enough income by 2025, then that will be fully achieving that goal. If it takes 2 more years than I planned, that's okay. But every time I have an opportunity to do something in performing arts that realistically fits into my life, I plan it in, and it's its own separate goal. So start with an idea, break it into distinct achievable steps, and make that one big goal bite-sized and achievable separate goals. And that way, as you check off each goal along the way, you're that much closer to something that may have initially seemed unattainable. What you think about, you bring about. Not unattainable. It's attainable if you structure it right. So the next step are realistic. Now, I want to caution you, realistic oftentimes gets couched in a very negative way because that's how we're raised. But when you're setting goals, you want to assess the steps that you need to take to plan to achieve the goal, right? You need to ask yourself if each of these steps is realistic given your current circumstances. And that is a really important reality check because you have to make sure that you don't set unrealistic goals because those lead to disappointment and surrender. And eventually you just don't want to do it anymore because you feel like you're failing. But that's probably because you didn't break it up into separate, distinct, realistic, achievable goals. So make each step small enough that you're getting there little by little, right? If you do it that way, you can avoid putting limitations on your goals. So when I say avoid limiting beliefs, that's because limiting beliefs make your goals reduced, and it makes you look at life in a smaller in a smaller window, right? A little smaller hourglass, if you will. The only limitations on what we want to achieve in life are the limitations that we ourselves create. If we don't sell ourselves short, then we will be able to achieve more. So don't sell yourself short. Allow your beliefs to not be limited. Make sure that you don't have limiting beliefs that stop you from setting goals that are hard to achieve. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it's impossible. I hope nobody gets upset with me for bringing him up, but I have to talk about Jeff Bezos here before I talk about Earl Nightingale more. Jeff Bezos was a kid that was born to a 15-year-old unwed mother, and his father was an alcoholic. They were divorced before he was 2. They got married after she was pregnant, and then they got divorced before he was 2. But his mama taught him that he could do whatever he wanted. He happened to be a pretty smart kid, and he really took that seriously. And he is now one of the 2 wealthiest people in the world because he had a goal of creating a business that would have the most convenient marketplace in the world. Now, that wasn't his original goal. He had separate goals along the way, right? His wife, ex-wife, Mackenzie Bezos, she was an author, and she had family contacts that helped them to, create an idea for a book publishing business online. So he left his 9-to-5 job and he went and started an online business for book selling and grew from there. But it's step by step. And if you look at where you are and you say, I can't do that, then believe me, you won't be able to. But if you look at where you are and you say, one step at a time, I'm going to get there, then at the very least, even if you ultimately do not become as wealthy as Jeff Bezos, you will assuredly become wealthier along the path, because you're not going to be stuck where you are today. So every step toward that goal is a step of self-improvement, financially, physically, emotionally. So don't put limitations on your goals. Those limiting beliefs will stop you from achieving. A great attitude does much more than turn on the lights in our worlds. It seems to magically connect us to all sorts of serendipitous opportunities that were somehow absent before the change. Earl Nightingale is absolutely brilliant. And saying something like this is, there's such a simple truth to this, because the truth is what really changes when you open yourself up to opportunities is that not that the opportunities were not there. It's not that all of a sudden you have luck. No, it's that you have an attitude of receptiveness to opportunities, and you start seeing them. And more importantly, because you're creating these goals and you're doing these steps that make you more prepared, when an opportunity presents itself, you're ready to say yes. So that's what he's talking about there. If you had just stayed where you were and you had not started making changes, then you would not be able to say yes. We have a question from one of our audience members. Oh, yeah. So that's a great question. And yeah, I still get plagued by limiting beliefs. I'm sure everybody does. I'm sure even Jeff Bezos and Earl Nightingale and Doris Bannock got plagued by limiting beliefs sometimes. What you have to do to overcome them is you have to be prepared to overcome them. I read a book almost every month. For a long time, it was every month. But like I said, I reread Earl Nightingale's Lead the Field 3 times. Not because I needed to memorize it, but because I needed to keep hearing that message. I needed to keep I needed Earl Nightingale to keep telling me that I was on the right path. And even if things aren't going well today, I'm going to get up and make today the best day of the rest of my life. Not the first day, the best day, right? Because that's the only way that I'm going to keep wanting to achieve and not get knocked down when something goes wrong. I've actually just finished reading The Happiness Advantage by Sean Acorn. Awesome book. There's tons of things like that you can do. And you want to also do things that uplift your soul. I make a point of, no matter how bad things get along the path, I lost half my staff a month and a half ago. And it was a nightmare to try to pivot and restructure and get new people in and, do new training while we had a very heavy caseload. And at the same time, I made the decision not to give up the things that were spiritually, intellectually, and emotionally important to me. So yes, I have been working more hours, a lot more hours over the last month and a half, because this pivot required that, but I didn't want to get depressed over it. So I made sure that I still had time for going fishing with my extended family one day, for watching a movie with my daughter and just sitting on the couch and cuddling. I also, I started a crochet project. I'm making a blanket for my niece because I need to stay sane, right? Even when things get hard. And a lot of people do meditation. I'm a church goer. So, first thing I did, no lie, my staff will attest. First thing I did when I found out that I was losing 2 employees back to back within less than a week, I called up my remaining staff and I said, I'm going to church this morning. It's in the middle of the week. And I said, I just need to go be with God and just kind of let this kind of go. You need to just do those things to keep yourself sane. It's part of pivoting. It's part of achieving the goals. Stay on track by staying sane. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. So it's a great question. So the next thing in your smarter goals is time. You need to set a time frame. So set a due date of when you want to achieve the goal. And I would again say, also a great idea to set time blocks along the way for all of the little goals that are on your path, on your roadmap, right? You have to set goals that will encourage you and set timeframes that will encourage you to follow through and stop procrastinating and keep yourself accountable. This workshop series, as a matter of fact, was an idea that I came up with 3 years ago, and I kept putting it on the back burner and putting it on the back burner. And I finally told a couple of really good friends who helped me with my marketing endeavors that I need to do this. And once I put it out there, and I could no longer hide from it because I put it out there with a time frame. I said, I need to get this done. And we set up a schedule to get it done. And once you do that, you basically subconsciously, you give yourself no way out, right? I mean, I could have easily just gone on and on and on, writing up notes and ideas that I had done for years. But once it was on paper and other people knew about it, I was forced to follow through. So that time frame and that accountability, and I will tell you, there is nothing better than accountability buddies if you can get your hands on them, because your accountability buddies will make sure that you don't say, oh, that's just a fake timeline that I made up. No. Accountability buddy is going to say, you said you were doing this by December. What's going on? And then all of a sudden, it's a whole new ballgame, right? The other aspect of this is the fear of time. We often say we don't have time. And that's what I was doing with this workshop series, right? For years, it was, I don't have time. I'm writing my procedures. I'm hiring new staff. I'm learning how to run new kinds of cases. I don't have time. Well, none of that has changed. And this has actually been a harder year than any of those prior years, because with the COVID transitions and so many things hitting us from out of left field and having to learn to do things differently, this was probably the hardest year yet to get this done. The fear of not having time is a limiting belief in itself. Earl Nightingale says, don't let the fear of time that it will take to accomplish something stand in the way of your doing it. The time will pass anyway. We might just as well be putting that time to the best possible use. Amen, Earl. That's what your time limitations or your time schedules is all about. Putting that time to the best possible use. Saying, if it's, setting your alarm clock to say, you know what, if I work 15 minutes every morning on this project, by the end of 30 days, it's going to be done. Instead of saying, I need 6 hours to do this project, where am I going to get 6 hours? For example, I wrote a book, Bankruptcy: A Fresh Start. That was part of the early phases of structuring a sustainable business. When I wrote that book, my coach at the time told me, you're never going to write it if you think you have to write a book. Get up 20 minutes earlier every day for the next 60 days and just write. And I will meet with you once a week to see your progress. And then we'll edit it. And that's what we did. And in 60 days, I had a book. And then I was just working with designers for the cover and getting it published. And it's been great. Everybody loves it, and the project got done. The next step in your smarter goals is to evaluate your progress and evaluate your goals. You must evaluate your goals along the way. Evaluation equals review and reflection. What's working? What's not working? What has gone well? What hasn't gone well? What's gotten in your way and what's been helpful along the way? If you look at those things along the path, with each step, you'll be able to get to the next step without making unnecessary mistakes. Earl Nightingale says, your problem is to bridge the gap which exists between where you are now and the goal you intend to reach. And so evaluating each step along the way and how you're doing helps you to get to where you're going. So you want to look at that consistently to see if there are any changes that you need to make along the way. Building in your points for evaluating your goal and your progress keeps you accountable to yourself. Remember, even if you don't have an accountability buddy, this is your life. These are the things that you have decided that you want for yourself, for your family. And because it's your life and your goal, at the end of the day, you're the only one that cares if you achieve it. So you keep yourself accountable by routinely evaluating it rather than getting bombarded with negative influences, and you will be able to get to the point of seeing whether you need to make changes or whether you're on course. And when you do see that you need to make changes, don't be afraid of them. That's the last step in your smarter goals, which is revise. Goals are living things. They're just as alive as you are. Most likely, your goals will change over time. They're not perfect, and neither is life. And the situations and circumstances in your life will have regular changes. Don't be afraid of it. If you had set up a goal to go on tour in 2019 and, to do a 10 major cities tour by the end of 2020, and then COVID happened, obviously you didn't fail, but you had to pivot. Maybe you went on Zoom for the 2020 component until you were able to actually do in-person tours again. Whatever it is, if you know what you're trying to do and you know what your goal is and you know the roadmap to get there, you can make the changes along the way. So recognize the needs for a change in your plan, reassess the plan, and revise the plan as needed. That's pivoting. It's a necessary and great skill. I'm going to give you a quote from the Happiness Advantage by Sean Achor, because at this point, when we're looking at revising our goals and the need for pivoting, it's the time to talk about really using failures and adversity to your advantage. Sean Achor says, the most successful people see adversity not as a stumbling block, but as a stepping stone to greatness. Indeed, every failure is often the fuel for the very ideas that eventually transform industries, make record profits, and reinvent careers. He's a social psychologist, Yale PhD, and he comes from a place where he has seen people take adversity and either grow with it or succumb to it. And his theory in the Happiness Advantage is that we are always better structured to succeed if we look at growth potentials, even in adversity. And so that's why the smarter goals always have built into them revisions. So the next slide is something that I got from Yale. It's just a simple structure about the different aspects of our life. I put this in because I want to make sure that we're looking at our goals holistically. Because, when we say that we want a specific monetary goal or a specific material goal, we always have to remember that we are multidimensional beings, and every aspect of our well-being affects other aspects of our well-being. So if we're setting a financial goal that has as part of the necessity to achieve it, something that is going to somehow cause us adversity emotionally or spiritually or physically, then maybe we need to rethink whether that goal is something that we really want in our life. And that's why I go back to the beginning and I say, you always have to look at your why. What's the purpose? What do you want to achieve by having that goal? So always look at yourself holistically and think about your overall wellness when you're thinking about what you want your goals to be like. We're already over time, so I'm going to try to just kind of go a little bit more quickly through the last few slides. When we think about our credit score and our goals, I want you to just make sure that you're thinking about that again in a holistic sense. Why do you want your credit score to be better? Is it because you want to buy your first home? Okay, how does a credit score help you get there? And how do you need to structure the goal to get you on that path? And I have a couple of examples there. When you're setting your goal to buy your first home and you're looking at what you need to put in place to be able to qualify for the mortgage to buy your first home, yes, the credit score is a component. So you may want to say, I will have at least a 750 credit score by September when I will bid on my first home. Okay, that structure is very important. The next slide has just, an example of a smarter financial goal. If you look over it, if you say you want to have enough money to overcome an emergency in your family's life, I can let you guys read through that yourselves. I'll just do kind of a quick run through. Your goal, if you want an emergency fund because you want your family to be able to overcome a short-term adversity, you can say, I will save at least $6,000. Why $6,000? Well, maybe because that's what you need for 2 or 3 or 6 months of living expenses, whatever that is. It's your budget. That number is, right? It's just a fictitious number, but it's whatever you need for that buffer, for that emergency fund to keep your family afloat if something happens. I will save at least $6,000 by the end of 2023 so that I do not have to worry if I have a short-term financial emergency. It has all the components, right? It has a specific goal. It's measurable. It is achievable. How are you going to achieve it, right? You're achieving it, but you may say, how am I going to achieve that? I can barely meet my current liabilities. I'm falling behind all the time. Well, that may be because you need to budget. So maybe a specific step in achieving that goal is creating your household budget and seeing where there are maybe a few things that you can do without. Or maybe to make it realistic, you might have to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy and get rid of a bunch of bad debt so that you're not making unnecessary minimum monthly payments. Because remember, it's your life. This is your goal. So whatever somebody else may think is good for them may not be what's good for you. So put those components in place and make it time-based, right? It says by the end of 2023. Why? Because let's just assume you can carve out $250 a month, whether that's by discharging your credit card debt or by, canceling cable. I know that's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, but I mean, my cable bill is $220 a month. If I just said, I'm not going to have cable anymore, I would be able to achieve this goal in 2 years. So those are the kind of things, and that's why it's important to look at each step in the process and make sure that you're making it realistic. And you want to reevaluate it and see if you're getting to your goal in a timely manner, if you can get there faster. That's why you want to put those extra little pieces of verbiage to make sure you're not limiting yourself. At least $6,000 by the end of 2023. Maybe we could even say that a little differently. Actually, I would rewrite that now that I'm looking at it again. I will save at least $6,000 on or before the end of 2023. Let's take out those limitations. I can do it faster. I will. Right? So, and then you revise it. Maybe it's not going as well and you need to give yourself a little bit more time. That's fine too. So setting goals is a commitment. Never forget, what you think about, you bring about. What you think about, you bring about. You commit, and that's the only way to achieve. Set your goals, write them down, share them with someone you trust if possible, make them an accountability buddy. Talk about your goals. Set up a picture that shows your goal. Put Post-it notes all around with your goal so you don't lose sight of it. Make a commitment to making today the best day of the rest of your life. I hope you guys really enjoyed this presentation. If you have any questions or follow-up, please don't hesitate to let us know. If you want to share this with a friend, let us know. We're happy to send them the link. The workshop itself does have a fee associated, but if you attended this workshop and you ask us to share it with a friend, we'd be glad to do that. So again, thank you for attending, and we hope to see you all in January for our next workshop, which will be on Texas. Thanks. Have a great day.